He was a ruthless billionaire who built an empire without love, without mercy, until he met her. Maya, a quiet literature student with nothing but a mop, a dream, and a heart too big for his cold world. What began as a chance elevator encounter unraveled secrets, betrayal, and a love so fierce it forced him to choose power or redemption. But when the truth shattered everything, could love survive the wreckage? Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping, emotional stories that will leave you breathless till the very end. They called me many things. Ruthless, cold, calculated. I'd earned those titles, wore them like armor in the boardrooms where empires were built and destroyed with a single handshake. My name, Aiden Cole, had become a whisper of fear and respect in every high-rise across the city. I didn't flinch. I didn't bend. I didn't love. Love was weakness, and weakness was something I couldn't afford. That night was like any other. A late meeting, a glass of scotch untouched on the polished mahogany table, and numbers flashing across digital screens like lifeblood. I signed off on a merger worth over $500 million and didn't feel a thing. The men I worked with would toast, sleep with someone they barely remembered, and move on to the next kill. I just wanted silence. Structure. The sterile rhythm of control. I left my office at 11:47 p.m. The top floor of the Coltech Tower, 50 stories of glass, steel, and relentless ambition. My kingdom. I pressed the elevator button, the doors slid open with a practiced whisper, and I stepped inside. She was already there. She stood in the corner, half-shadowed, clutching a stack of books so tightly against her chest I thought she might crush them. Her head was slightly bowed, a strand of chestnut hair falling across her cheek. She looked up as I entered, startled, her eyes wide and unsure. "Floor?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than intended. She blinked, then whispered, "Lobby, please." There was something about her voice, soft but not weak, like a quiet stream cutting through rock over time. I pressed the button and stood still, hands in my coat pockets. The silence between us settled thick in the air. I was used to silence, I welcomed it, but with her, it felt charged. Heavy. I glanced sideways. She looked young, maybe mid-20s. Her sweater was a little too big, sleeves pulled down to her knuckles. Her jeans were worn at the knees. Her shoes, canvas, scuffed, were the kind you walked miles in. Not someone who belonged in a place like this. She smelled like lavender and old paper. "You work here?" I asked, surprising even myself. I didn't make small talk. Small talk was for people who gave a damn. She nodded once, her fingers tightening around the books. "Just part-time. I clean the offices at night, helps with tuition." Of course she was in school. There was an earnestness about her, a kind of quiet dignity. Her eyes were brown but flecked with gold, and they carried a weight that didn't match her age. "What do you study?" Again, that flicker of surprise at my interest. She adjusted her grip on the books. "Literature. I want to teach one day. Help kids find themselves in stories, the way I did." Her words settled into me like a slow burn. Find themselves in stories. I couldn't remember the last time I'd read anything that wasn't a contract or a report. Books had once meant something to me, before I traded dreams for deadlines. The elevator dinged. We'd reached the lobby. She stepped out without looking back, murmuring a soft "good night" as the doors slid closed behind her. I stood there, frozen. Something about her had torn a hole in the static of my life. I didn't even know her name, but I wanted to, needed to. That realization alone shook me more than any deal ever had. The days that followed blurred. Meetings, deadlines, numbers. I had 2 major acquisitions in the works and a tech rollout planned for Q3. My mind was supposed to be on high-level strategy. Instead, it was filled with her. I stayed late more often, told myself it was about work. It wasn't. I wanted to see her again, catch another glimpse. Her laugh, her eyes, that strange calm she wore like armor. She reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Something good. Something human. 4 days passed before I saw her again. It was nearly midnight. Most of the office was dark, the city below a quilt of gold and silver lights. I was walking toward the elevator when I heard it. Soft humming, a melody I didn't recognize. It drifted like a breeze from one of the conference rooms. I followed the sound. She was there, wiping down a long table, her back to me. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, tendrils slipping free. She moved slowly, almost dancing to the rhythm of her own world. There was no performance, no pretense, just her, and the quiet music of her breath and motion. I leaned against the doorway, watched for a moment longer than I should have. "You're here late," I said finally. She jumped, spun around with a start, clutching a rag to her chest. Her cheeks flushed. "You scared me. Didn't mean to." We stood there in the stillness. Her gaze met mine for a breath, then slipped away. "I thought everyone had gone home. I usually stay late." She smiled nervously, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Well, it's just me and the vacuum." "You always sing when you work?" That blush deepened. "Only when I think I'm alone." "What was the song?" She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with a cloth. "Something my mom used to sing when I was scared. Helps me feel grounded." Grounded. I tasted the word. I hadn't been grounded in years. My world was built on strategy, control. But in that moment, I wanted to understand what grounded felt like. I wanted to understand her. "I'm Aiden," I said finally. She looked up, and for the first time she smiled without fear. Maya. It suited her. Simple, honest, soft around the edges but strong underneath. "I should finish up," she said, glancing at her watch. "I've got class at 8. "Good night, Maya." She walked past me, her shoulder brushing mine for the briefest moment. It was like static electricity, harmless but impossible to ignore. After that, she was everywhere. Not literally. She still worked after hours, still moved like a ghost in a world that never saw her. But I saw her. In the hallway. In the reflection of the glass. In the scent of lavender that clung to my suit long after she passed. I started manufacturing excuses to stay late. I changed meetings, delayed flights. I told myself it was ridiculous, that I was chasing a shadow. But every time I saw her, sitting quietly in the break room, writing in a battered notebook, I felt something in me shift. Like an old door creaking open for the first time in years. One night, I found myself standing outside the janitorial closet, listening to the soft scrape of her broom on the tile. I waited until I heard her step into the hallway. "Hi," I said. She looked up, startled again, but less so this time. Her mouth curved in a small smile. "You're studying tonight?" She nodded, lifting her book. "Midterms, it's brutal." "Need help?" She raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering tutoring services, Mr. Cole?" I laughed, actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in my chest. "No, probably not the best idea. I haven't read fiction since college." "That's a shame," she said, voice gentle. "Stories are how we stay alive sometimes." "Alive?" She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Not breathing. Alive." I couldn't respond to that. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I suddenly realized how long I'd been merely breathing. Maya walked past me then, her scent brushing against me like silk. I turned to watch her disappear into the shadows of the corridor, and I knew this wasn't a passing interest. It was a fault line, a shift. The empire I built had always felt solid, indestructible. But one girl with a mop, a handful of books, and a heart too big for this place, she was cracking it open. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't want to stop it. The days blurred together like rain on a windshield. Meetings, contracts, flights, and fast conversations that felt like they belonged to another life. I moved through them all with the same precision I always had, except now I carried something different under my skin. Maya. She wasn't supposed to be important. She wasn't supposed to matter. She was a fleeting moment, a flicker in the dark, a girl with books and dreams who existed in a world that had no room for softness. But I couldn't shake her. Her name echoed through my mind like a verse I didn't know I was memorizing. Her smile lingered long after she left the room. I began to crave those accidental encounters like an addict hunting for a high. I told myself it was curiosity. That was safe, harmless. But it wasn't true. It was more. I adjusted my schedule without realizing it. I began leaving the office late, far later than necessary. My assistants noticed, but no one dared question me. I told Ezra, my head of security, that I needed more after-hours privacy, and he just nodded, assuming it was another sensitive merger or private meeting. But the truth was simpler. I just wanted to see her again. I started timing my exit with hers. I memorized the faint squeak of her cart's wheels, the sound of her humming, the gentle way she greeted the night shift security team by name. She never saw me watching, not really. I'd linger in hallways, standing in shadows like a coward, waiting for those tiny moments she looked up and smiled. Those moments were starting to mean more than the billion-dollar deal sitting on my desk. I'd never pursued someone like this before. Hell, I'd never really pursued anyone. Women came and went, attracted to the name, the money, the mystery. I gave them what they wanted. Weekends in Paris, diamonds they didn't earn, silence in the morning. But Maya, she wasn't like that. She didn't want anything from me. In fact, I had the distinct feeling that if I tried to impress her with my power, she'd walk the other way. She wasn't immune to me. I saw the way her cheeks flushed when our eyes met, but she didn't lean in. She held herself steady, like she had walls no one had ever breached. And for some reason, I wanted to be the one who broke through. One night, I caught her in the staff lounge curled up on a worn-out couch, a battered copy of the bell jar in her hands. She didn't notice me at first. Her lips were moving silently, tracing the rhythm of the prose. Her fingers played absently with the edge of a wool scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. I stepped in slowly. "Plath?" I asked. Her eyes lifted, surprised again, but the edges of her lips curved into something warm. "You know Sylvia Plath?" "I've heard of her," I said, walking to the vending machine and punching in a random code I didn't even care about. A packet of almonds dropped with a thud. "Wasn't she the one who stuck her head in the oven?" Maya's smile faltered, just for a second. That's not how I'd sum up her life. I sat across from her, tossing the almonds onto the table. "Fair enough. What would you say then?" She looked at me, really looked, like she was weighing whether I deserved an answer. Then gently, she was someone who felt everything too deeply, someone who couldn't find a place in the world that didn't try to shrink her. I stared at her. The way she said it, her voice soft but sure, it landed like a punch to the chest. "I didn't know people still read poetry," I said. "They do, the ones who need it." "You read because you need it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, some days it's the only thing that makes me feel seen." We sat in silence for a beat. The hum of the old refrigerator and the faint buzz of the overhead light filled the space between us. "You're not what I expected," I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "What did you expect?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Someone quieter, simpler." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that made something low in my stomach tighten. "I am quiet, and I'm definitely not complicated. But that doesn't mean I'm simple." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "No, you're not simple. You're something else." That silence fell again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It buzzed with energy, potential. Like if I said the wrong thing, she'd vanish. But if I said the right one, she might stay. "I never meant to distract you," she said suddenly, eyes on her book. "You didn't," I lied. She closed the book slowly, her fingers lingering on the cover. "You look at me like I confuse you." "You do." "Why?" I didn't have an answer I could give. Not one that didn't sound like obsession. I couldn't say that I replayed our conversations in my head late at night. I couldn't tell her I'd walked away from a $10 million deal just to linger near the break room and maybe see her smile. So I said the only truth that felt safe, because you don't fit. Fit what? This place, my world. She looked at me for a long moment, then gave a small, sad smile. "I know." And just like that, she stood, pulling her scarf tighter and slipping her book into her bag. I should get back to work. I stood too, caught in the sudden urgency of not letting her go. "Maya." She paused, half turned. "You don't have to fit," I said. "Not for me." Her eyes searched mine. There was something unreadable in them. Then she nodded, just once, and walked away. The next day, I ignored 6 calls from my board of directors. My CFO sent a report that went unread. I couldn't focus. Everything that used to command my attention now felt dull, dim. Even when I tried to bury myself in work, I'd find myself staring at the screen, the letters turning into shapes, the spreadsheets into noise. I thought maybe it would pass. That whatever pull Maya had on me would fade like the aftertaste of a strong drink. But it only got worse. I started looking forward to the nights. To the brief moments I'd see her pushing her cart down the hallway, earbuds in, humming something quiet and personal. I started learning her schedule, when she cleaned the executive floor, when she took her 15-minute breaks. I found myself adjusting my own routine to match hers. She never said anything about it, but I knew she noticed. I could feel it in the way her gaze lingered, just a little longer. The way her lips parted when she caught me watching her. She never invited me in. But she stopped closing the door. I learned things in fragments. She lived with a roommate who had 3 jobs and a cat named Hemingway. She loved lavender candles but couldn't afford them, so she made her own. Her father died when she was 10, and her mother worked 2 shifts at a diner to keep them afloat. She liked thunderstorms but hated lightning. She believed in second chances but didn't think they applied to her. Each detail was a thread. Each thread tied me closer. The girl who didn't belong in my world was becoming the only part of it that felt real. One evening I passed her in the hallway, our arms brushing in the narrow space between the walls. She looked up, startled, but didn't pull away. "Hi," I said, my voice lower than usual. "Hi," she replied, her breath catching. We stood there for a moment, neither of us moving. Her eyes dropped to my chest, then back to my face. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know." Her lips parted like she wanted to say more, but didn't. Instead, she stepped aside, giving me space to pass. I did, but not without brushing her fingers with mine as I moved past. It was small, barely a touch, but it unraveled me. That night, I stood in front of my window, looking down at the glittering skyline I once thought I ruled. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about numbers or enemies or deals. I wasn't thinking about profits or projections. I was thinking about Maya Hart, and I was starting to realize I didn't want her to be a fleeting moment in my story. I wanted her to be the whole damn book. The night was thick with the hum of the city, neon lights pulsing like distant heartbeats against the black sky. From my office, 50 stories up, everything below looked quiet, controlled. But inside me, the opposite was true. I stood with my hands in my pockets, staring out over the skyline I once ruled with an iron grip. And yet, all I could think about was a girl with a mop and a paperback. Maya had become the rhythm of my nights. Every brief moment with her replayed in my mind like a song I couldn't stop humming. I began to wonder what her favorite flowers were, what she looked like when she woke up, what kind of books made her cry. I had no business thinking those thoughts, no reason to feel this way. But logic had abandoned me the moment I saw her clutching her books in that elevator. Tonight, I wasn't pretending anymore. I stayed long after my staff had left. The office was dark, but I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I listened, ears tuned for her steps, the soft wheel of her cleaning cart, the gentle sound of her voice. The world outside kept spinning, but my universe had narrowed to one floor, one hallway, one girl. And then I heard it. A hum, almost shy, the kind of melody that felt like home even if you didn't recognize it. I followed the sound like a man possessed. Down the corridor, past the empty boardroom, past the glass conference rooms where million-dollar dreams were usually made and broken. And there she was. Maya stood at the head of the table in the small creative briefing room, wiping down the glass surface with gentle, deliberate movements. Her hair was pulled up into a messy bun, strands tumbling loose to brush the nape of her neck. She was wearing a faded blue hoodie, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She moved as if she were in her own world, slow, graceful, unaware of the impact she had just by existing. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching. There was something sacred about the moment. The dim overhead light softened the room, casting shadows that flickered across her skin. She was humming again, something quiet and wordless, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm. It wasn't rehearsed or pretty in the polished way, just honest, natural. I felt something stir in me, something dangerous. "You're here late," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She gasped and spun around, a rag clutched in her hand. Her cheeks flushed a delicate shade of pink, and she instinctively pressed a palm to her chest. "You scared me." "Didn't mean to." I stepped forward, slow, careful, like approaching a deer in the woods. "You always sing when you work?" Her blush deepened. She turned away slightly, wiping the same spot on the table even though it was already clean. "Only when I think I'm alone." "What's the song?" She hesitated, like she wasn't sure she wanted to share. "It's not really a song, just something my mom used to hum when I was little. Said it kept nightmares away." "Did it?" "Sometimes." She smiled faintly. "Now it just keeps me grounded." I tasted that word again, grounded, and let it linger on my tongue. It felt foreign to me. I hadn't been grounded in years. Everything in my life floated above the surface, superficial, curated, distanced by design. But Maya, she was made of earth and warmth and gravity. I never had a song like that. I admitted. She looked up at me, her eyes soft but curious. Then what kept your nightmares away? Work, I said honestly. And silence. Her gaze searched mine like she was trying to decipher if I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, something in her expression shifted. Gentler now. Not pity, just understanding. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shook my head. Don't be. I built this life. I just didn't expect it to feel so hollow. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and leaned back slightly against the table. Sometimes people build walls to keep others out and then forget they've locked themselves in. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. You ever think about what's on the other side of your wall? She asked. All the time, I said. Lately, I think it might be you. Her breath caught, just for a second, but I saw it. The silence stretched between us, delicate and fragile like spun glass. I stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough that she could feel the heat radiating from me. She looked up, her eyes wide but steady. Tell me to stop, Maya, I said quietly, and I'll go. She didn't speak. Instead, she looked down at her hands, twisting the rag between her fingers. I don't want you to stop, she whispered. That was all I needed. I reached out slowly, gently, and brushed my knuckles along her cheek. Her skin was warm, impossibly soft, and she leaned into my touch before she realized she was doing it. Her eyes fluttered shut. You make me feel like I don't have to be that man anymore, I said. Like I could be someone better, someone real. You are real, she said, opening her eyes. Maybe too real sometimes. I stepped closer. My hand slipped to the back of her neck, fingers curling lightly into her hair. Her breath hitched as I tilted my forehead to hers. Has anyone ever made you feel like you mattered? I asked, my voice no more than a whisper. She shook her head. No. A rush of emotion tore through me, something fierce and protective and raw. The idea that no one had ever cherished her, that she'd walked through the world invisible, broke something in me, and yet she was still kind, still good. I want to be the first, I said. The only. I want you to feel everything. Maya didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her lips brushed mine, tentative, barely a kiss. But it was enough to shatter whatever restraint I had left. I kissed her slowly, deliberately, pouring every unspoken word into the press of our mouths. She tasted like peppermint tea and something impossibly sweet. Her hands found my chest, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt like she needed something to hold on to. I pulled her closer, feeling her body mold to mine with a softness that made my heart ache. She broke the kiss first, her breath shaky. I don't know what this is, she said, but it scares me. I know, I said, touching her face again. It scares me too. We stood in the glow of the half-lit room, wrapped in silence, hearts pounding. She leaned her forehead into my chest, her voice muffled when she spoke again. I've never done any of this. I've never been with anyone. I know, I murmured, stroking her back, and I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want to give you the chance to feel safe, wanted, loved. Her fingers clutched tighter at my shirt. I felt her nod. I pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Then let me take my time. Let me earn you. The sincerity in her gaze made my knees weak. She didn't say anything, just pressed a hand against my cheek and whispered, okay. That night, I didn't touch her again. Not beyond her hand in mine as I walked her to the elevator. I didn't press. I didn't push. I just stood beside her, silent and sure, giving her space. When the elevator reached the lobby, she turned to me. Good night, Aiden. Good night, Maya. And then she stepped out, turning back just once with a small smile that felt like the promise of something bigger, something waiting to bloom. I stayed in the elevator long after the doors closed, staring at the empty space where she'd stood. That smile haunted me, because I knew without a doubt I'd fallen. And I wasn't ready for what that meant. The city breathed in low pulses beneath us, glittering in gold and silver as it stretched beyond the horizon. I had stood in my penthouse countless nights, looking out over the skyline like it was a kingdom I'd conquered. But tonight, it felt different. Smaller, quieter. Maybe because the only thing I wanted, the only thing that filled my chest with fire and ache, wasn't the city. It was her. Her name had become a mantra in my mind, a whisper that lived beneath every breath I took. I'd thought desire was simple, urgent, fleeting, physical. But this wasn't that. This was slower, deeper, heavier. Like I'd found something holy in a world built on profit and power. And still, I hadn't touched her. Not really. Our kiss had been soft, brief, trembling on the edge of everything we weren't saying. She was untouched, innocent in a way that wasn't naive, but sacred. Her honesty stripped me bare in a way no woman ever had. She didn't just stand in front of my walls, she disarmed them, with nothing but truth and trembling courage. I wanted her, but more than that, I wanted to be worthy of her. So I waited. I gave her space. I didn't flood her phone with texts or appear unannounced. But I stayed close, in the places I knew she passed, in the silences where her scent lingered. I learned her rhythms, her favorite tea, the bookstore she liked to slip into on Thursday nights. I learned her favorite poet, Mary Oliver, and how she whispered poems to herself when she thought no one was listening. And slowly, without force or fear, she let me in. We shared coffees, walks in the quiet park behind the university. Laughter over burnt toast in the executive lounge kitchen when I insisted I could cook. She started telling me about her childhood, about the nights she stayed up helping her mother sort diner receipts, about the way her father's death left a hole no one could fill. One evening, she asked if she could see where I lived. I didn't hesitate. My penthouse wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. Sleek lines, marble counters, glass and chrome, and curated silence. But when Maya walked in, barefoot, with her scarf hanging loose around her neck, the space transformed. She wandered through each room like a dream brushing past reality. Her fingertips skimmed the edge of the piano I never played, the spines of the books I didn't read. She paused in front of a painting I'd bought because someone told me it was valuable, not because I liked it. She turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever feel lonely here?" "All the time." She nodded like she already knew the answer. Then she wandered into the kitchen, opening drawers, laughing when she found the plates still in their packaging. "You don't cook, do you?" "I barely use the fridge. We're fixing that," she said, grabbing a skillet like it was a sword. "Right now." She made grilled cheese, burnt one, laughed so hard when the smoke alarm went off that I had to kiss the sound right off her lips. We ate on the floor with legs crossed and heads tilted toward one another like teenagers. And then, when the world was quiet again, she leaned into me, her head on my shoulder, her fingers brushing mine. She didn't speak, and neither did I. We didn't need to. Later, as I walked her to the elevator, she turned to face me, eyes steady but hesitant. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why haven't you tried to sleep with me?" The question stunned me. Not because she asked it, but because it was laced with something vulnerable and raw. "I thought that was obvious," I said gently, "because I care about you." Her brows pulled slightly. "Most men say that, but they don't wait." "I'm not most men." She looked down, twisting the fabric of her sleeve between her fingers. "I know. That's what scares me." "Maya," I said, lifting her chin with a single finger. "I want you, more than I've ever wanted anything. But not because of what we can do. I want you because of who you are. I'd wait forever for that." A flicker of something passed through her, like trust finally taking root. "I don't think I want you to wait forever," she whispered, and then she kissed me. It wasn't hesitant this time. It was slow but certain, the kind of kiss that sank deep into my bones. Her hand slid up my chest, fingers gripping my collar as if she needed something to hold her steady. I pulled her close, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist, grounding her as our mouths moved in a rhythm we hadn't practiced but somehow knew. When we pulled apart, breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "I've never done this," she said softly. "Any of it." "I know. Not just sex, intimacy, trust, letting someone matter." I brushed her cheek with my thumb, feeling the tremble just beneath her skin. "You matter," I said. "You matter more than you know." She didn't reply, just closed her eyes, letting that truth settle between us. That night, I didn't let her leave. She stayed, not because of pressure or need, but because we both wanted to be near something safe, something real. We lay on the oversized couch in the living room, wrapped in blankets and dim light. Her head rested on my chest, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on my skin. I didn't sleep. I just watched her. The rise and fall of her breath, the softness of her lips, the peace in her face. In the morning, she made coffee. Terrible coffee. I drank it anyway. As she pulled on her coat ready to head to her early class, she paused at the door. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not rushing me." I stepped forward, took her face in my hands, and kissed her slow, like punctuation at the end of a promise. "I'm in no rush," I said. "When you're ready, I'll still be here." She nodded, smiled, and left. And I stood there, alone, in the soft scent of her lavender shampoo, my heart steady in a way it hadn't been in years. But that steady rhythm didn't last. A few days later, I sat at my desk, staring at my calendar, trying to rearrange yet another board meeting around the hours I knew Maya would be free. My assistant knocked, reminding me I had a call with investors in 15 minutes. I waved her off, eyes locked on my phone. Maya had sent me a photo of her study space, books scattered across a cafe table, a tea mug beside her laptop, and a caption, "Wish you were here." I smiled like an idiot. I was already typing a reply when Ezra's number popped up on the screen. "Sir," he said, his voice low, "we have a situation. It's about Maya." Everything in me went still. "What kind of situation?" "It's not clear yet," he said, "but something's off. I'd like to speak in person." A chill crept over me like ice water through my veins. "Come to my office, now." I ended the call, suddenly breathless. My hand hovered over the photo she'd just sent, the one that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could believe in something as ridiculous as fate. But in the pit of my stomach, something twisted. Something warned me. The first kiss, the first night spent in each other's arms, the first promise whispered in the quiet, these should have been the beginning of something beautiful. But now, they felt like the calm before the storm, and I had the terrible feeling that everything we'd built was about to be tested. Ezra arrived 10 minutes later, his face tight and unreadable, the way it always was when something was wrong. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He never did. But today there was a sharp edge to him I hadn't seen in years. He closed the door behind him and handed me a slim black folder. "I think you'll want to read this," he said. I opened it, expecting the usual. A breach in one of our data vaults, maybe chatter from a competitor circling one of our subsidiaries. But as my eyes fell on the first page, my blood turned to ice. It was a financial statement, a payment, to a cleaning services agency, the same agency that had hired Maya. My chest tightened as I flipped the page. Attached was a list of names, employment verification records, and wire transfers. A woman's name jumped out at me, Simone Caldwell, my ex-chief operating officer, fired 2 years ago for attempting to funnel company data to a rival firm. Ruthless, brilliant, vicious. "She's been orchestrating something," Ezra said, voice low, "for months now, slowly, quietly." I looked at him, unsure if I was hearing right. "What does this have to do with Maya?" Ezra didn't flinch. He pointed to a highlighted line on the next page. "Simone funneled money through a dummy holding company. That company owns the cleaning agency Maya works for. It's not a coincidence she ended up on your floor." "No." My voice came out flat. Denial wasn't even forming yet. It didn't have time. Ezra continued, unfolding another document, a printed email. "This was recovered from Simone's old encrypted drive. Took weeks to decrypt. She was very clear about her intentions. You were the target. Maya was the bait." "No." Louder this time. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "She's working with Garrison Tech," he added, naming our fiercest competitor. "They've been trying to poach your clients, destabilize your stock, get you distracted. And it worked." My hands gripped the edge of the desk. I stared at the cold ink on the paper. My name? Maya's name. Simone's venom bleeding across every word. "Does Maya know?" Ezra shook his head. "From everything I've gathered, no. She's clean. Just a girl trying to pay for school. There's no indication she knew she was part of a setup." I exhaled slowly, but it didn't bring any relief. The room around me felt suddenly too quiet, the walls too close. I pushed away from my desk and paced to the window, staring at the city like it could give me answers. I thought I'd found her by chance. I thought it was fate. But what if it was all manufactured? A puppet on strings, pulled into my life like a weapon dressed in lavender and books. It didn't make sense. Maya wasn't like that. She couldn't be. I would have seen it, felt it. Every second with her had been real, hadn't it? "She didn't know," I muttered. "You don't know that." "I do." I snapped, then softer, as if to myself, "I have to." Ezra stepped forward, more cautious now. "What do you want to do?" I stared at the folder still lying open on my desk. Every instinct screamed to tell her. But something stopped me. What if she didn't believe me? Worse, what if she thought I'd known all along? That I'd played into it, let her fall for me as part of some cruel game? That everything we'd shared, everything I'd promised was just another manipulation? She'd never forgive me. And I couldn't lose her. But if I said nothing, if I kept this hidden, it would be a lie. One that hung over us like a guillotine. I didn't speak for a long time. Ezra waited, silent. Finally, I looked at him. Keep digging. I want every piece of Simone's operation laid bare. I want to know who knew what and when. And I want her stopped. She already has warrants. We're working with federal investigators. Good, make it airtight. He nodded. And Maya? My chest ached at her name. I looked away. I said, she doesn't need to know. Not yet. Ezra hesitated. That's a dangerous call. I'll protect her, I said, even if it means protecting her from the truth, for now. He didn't argue. He knew better than anyone what I was capable of when it came to war. And that's what this was now. Simone wanted a distraction. She was about to find out what happened when you pointed a gun at the wrong man's heart. After Ezra left, I sat back at my desk, staring at my phone. A message from Maya lit up the screen. Maya, finished my paper. Finally, can't wait to tell you about it. Miss you. I stared at her words for a long time and didn't reply. That night, I didn't go to her. The next morning, I canceled our plans. Then I started pulling away. At first, it was subtle. Meetings that ran late, excuses about calls and deadlines. Then, days passed between our texts. I made myself cold, clipped, distant. It broke me to do it, to see her eyes searching mine for answers I refused to give. But I kept going, because I thought it was the only way to keep her safe, to keep us from falling apart. But I underestimated her. Maya wasn't just kind. She was sharp, intuitive, and when I avoided her in the lobby one evening, when I gave her a half-hearted wave instead of the usual touch of my hand to her waist, she followed me, cornered me by the elevator, her jaw tight with frustration. Aiden, she said. What's going on? I'm busy. That's not it. I'm swamped, Maya. We've got major investors circling and a rollout next week. She stepped in front of the elevator doors as they opened, forcing me to face her. Don't lie to me. If something's wrong, just say it. I swallowed hard. I could have told her the truth right then, but I didn't. Cowardice or strategy, I'm still not sure which. I think we rushed things, I said, her expression shattered, like I'd slapped her. What? You're young. You've got school, a future. I'm not what you need. That's bullshit. You don't belong in my world. You said that before, she whispered. And then you told me I didn't have to. I looked away. I was wrong. She was shaking now, blinking rapidly. So that's it, after everything? I didn't answer. She stepped back like I'd hit her. You said you cared about me. I closed my eyes, heart pounding. I did. Did. Her voice cracked. So it meant nothing? I stayed silent. She turned and walked away without another word. And I told myself I was doing the right thing, that she'd be safer not knowing. But 3 days later, it all crumbled. Ezra called again, this time with panic in his voice. She knows. My heart dropped. What do you mean? She overheard one of the night staff talking. Something about Simone. About how the cleaning company was a front. Someone put it together and told her. I stood, the ground shifting beneath me. She thinks I knew. Ezra didn't respond. He didn't need to. I was already pulling out my phone when her message came through. Just one sentence. I trusted you. How could you? And then, nothing. No replies, no calls, no second chance. I'd broken her in the very way I swore I never would. And for the first time in my life, I felt powerless. The empire I built couldn't save me. Not from the truth. Not from her heartbreak. Not from myself. The silence that followed Maya's message was more than absence. It was punishment. It was a weight that sat on my chest day and night, pressing harder with each breath. I trusted you. How could you? That was all she wrote. But it said everything, and she hadn't said anything since. I stared at her words every morning, every night, typed out responses, pages of them, confessions, explanations, desperate pleas, but I never sent any, because I knew. I knew that silence was louder than any scream. She wasn't waiting for my defense. She was done. And I had no one to blame but myself. I told myself I had done the right thing, pushing her away, keeping the truth hidden. I convinced myself that if I had protected her from the ugliness of what Simone had done, I was being noble. But noble men didn't break the hearts of innocent women. And I broke hers. I stopped going home. The penthouse, once a glass monument to my success, now felt hollow. I started sleeping in the office again, The nights were long and cruel. Every corner reminded me of her. The way she hummed when she cleaned, the scent of her perfume that lingered on the elevator buttons, the echo of her laughter in the break room when she burnt grilled cheese. I was a ghost in my own empire. Simone had won, not just because she manipulated us, but because I had done the final damage with my own hands. She set the stage, yes, but I wrote the ending. I drove Maya away. My staff noticed the change. My board did too. I snapped during meetings, missed calls, canceled appearances. My assistant caught me one morning staring at a blank screen for nearly 20 minutes. "Aiden," she said gently, "you okay?" I looked up, blinking. "Fine." But I wasn't. I was unraveling. And still, I did nothing. Because what was there to do? I had ruined the one pure thing in my life. I'd turned a girl who looked at me like I was worth loving into someone who couldn't bear to speak my name. Then came the breaking point. I was walking out of a boardroom when I passed the lobby and caught a glimpse of Lavender. I stopped short. Maya. She was sitting on a bench, flipping through a paperback, her brow furrowed in concentration. My heart stuttered in my chest. She hadn't seen me yet. I took a step forward, frozen between longing and fear. Then another figure approached, one of her coworkers, a woman from facilities. They exchanged a few words, low and fast. I could see the shift in Maya's expression even from across the lobby. She stood, pale and tense, and I saw her mouth the word, "What?" The woman nodded, looking guilty. Maya turned toward the elevator. Her steps were fast, her back straight, her eyes wide. She didn't see me, but I saw everything. She knew. Not just pieces, not just suspicions. She knew the whole thing. I should have run after her. I should have told her the truth the moment I saw her. But I stood there, frozen, my mouth dry, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. By the time I made it upstairs, she was gone. That night, I got her message, short, final. "I trusted you. How could you?" No signature, no goodbye, just silence after that. Days passed, then weeks. I tried to work, failed. I tried to sleep, failed. I tried to forget, failed miserably. I saw her everywhere, not just in places we'd shared, but in places she'd never been. I saw her in the bend of a stranger's elbow, in the shadow of a bookstore window. I heard her humming in my dreams, saw her eyes in the steam of my untouched tea. I had money, power, influence, but none of that could bring her back. Because I hadn't just hurt her, I'd made her feel like she was used. And no apology could erase that. I thought of showing up at her apartment, kneeling at her door, explaining everything, but even that felt selfish, like forcing her to face the man who'd made her question every kind thing she believed in. So instead, I let the guilt rot me. Until one night, I opened the last text she ever sent, stared at it for a full hour, and finally said the words aloud. I was wrong. It wasn't a revelation, it was an admission, a surrender. I had done what I said I never would. I hurt her, not just through Simone's scheme, through my silence, my lies, my cowardice. I didn't protect her, I betrayed her, and I couldn't live with that. The next morning I called Ezra. "I want everything you have on Simone, all of it. Every file, every name, every dollar she touched." "Already compiled," he said. "I thought you'd ask." "Good, we're going to burn her down." He didn't flinch. Legally, completely. It took 5 days, 5 meetings, 2 closed-door sessions with federal agents, and 1 press release that lit the financial world on fire. Simone Caldwell was arrested for fraud, conspiracy, and corporate espionage. Her entire operation was traced back to Garrison Tech, who issued a panicked statement within hours. Stocks dropped. Executives resigned. I stood in the center of it all, like a man who'd just put out a fire with his bare hands and burned everything in the process. But I wasn't doing it for revenge anymore. I was doing it for Maya. Because even if she never forgave me, she deserved to know that she wasn't a pawn, that I was. And more importantly, that what we had, what I felt, was real. When the dust settled, I went to her. I didn't send flowers. I didn't bring bodyguards. I didn't wear a suit. I showed up at her apartment in jeans and a sweater and a heart that felt like it had been stitched back together with trembling hands. I knocked once. The door opened slowly. Maya stood there, barefoot, hair tied back, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that swallowed her frame. Her eyes were red, but her stare was steady. She didn't say a word. I swallowed hard. I didn't know, not at first, and when I did, I panicked. Still, she said nothing. "I was afraid," I said. "Afraid that if I told you, you'd think it was all fake." that I used you. Aiden, she whispered, voice hoarse, you let me believe I was a lie. I stepped closer. You weren't. You were the only truth in my life. Her chin trembled. Why didn't you just tell me? Because I've never loved anyone before, I said. And I didn't know how. The words hung there. Loved. She looked away. You think that makes it better? No, but I hope it makes it honest. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folder. Everything Simone did, bank records, messages, the paper trail. Proof you were never involved. I gave it to the authorities, but I wanted you to have it too. She took it, fingers trembling graw. Then, slowly, painfully, she opened the door wider. Come in. I stepped inside, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Her apartment was small, modest, filled with warm light and the scent of lavender. It looked like her, soft, lived in, gentle. Books lined every available surface, paperbacks stacked on the windowsill, on the floor beside the couch, on the kitchen counter. A mug of half-finished tea sat next to a lit candle, and the air hummed with the quiet stillness of a life rooted in solitude. She motioned for me to sit, then closed the door behind us without a word. The lock clicked. My heart did too. Maya settled on the opposite end of the couch, arms folded across her chest, legs drawn up beneath her. She didn't meet my eyes right away. Her gaze was fixed on the folder I'd handed her. The pages were still clutched in her fingers, smudged slightly from her touch. She hadn't let it go. For a long moment, the silence stretched between us, tense and fragile. I didn't know where to begin. Everything I rehearsed on the way over had disappeared the second I saw her face. So I started with the only truth I had left. I never meant for you to get hurt, I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up, unreadable. But I did. I know. You let me believe I was a setup, a joke. I flinched. You were never a joke. Then why did you lie? I ran a hand through my hair, fingers knotting at the back of my neck. Because I was afraid. Because I've built my whole life controlling every outcome, every variable. And you were the first thing I couldn't control. You mattered more than anything else. And when I found out the truth about Simone, what she did, I panicked. You thought hiding it would protect me? No, I said, voice thick. I thought pushing you away would. Her expression shifted, conflicted. That was the cruelest part, not Simone, not the company. You. I nodded slowly, shame washing over me. I know. Maya looked down at the pages again, thumb brushing over Simone's signature. She used me. She did. But so did you. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat. She was right. I had used her, not in the way Simone intended, but I'd used her presence like a balm, her kindness like salvation. And when it got hard, when the truth threatened the fantasy, I'd run. I had wounded her in the same way I swore I never would. I'm sorry? I whispered. She said nothing. I can't undo what happened. I can't erase the damage. But I can tell you what's real. Her eyes met mine, guarded but waiting. You, I said. From the moment I saw you in that elevator, you were real. The way you spoke, the way you saw the world, the way you looked at me like I wasn't a monster. That was never a game. I didn't fall in love with the girl Simone planted. I fell in love with the girl who wouldn't let me hide from myself. The word hung in the air between us. Love. Maya blinked, but didn't look away. You love me? I do, I said. I don't know how to do it well, but I do. I love you in a way that scares the hell out of me. And if you walk away now, I'll understand. But I need you to know. I will spend the rest of my life making this right. Not as a CEO, not with money or gifts, but as a man who wants to be worthy of you. Her breath hitched. She looked down at her lap, silent for what felt like forever. And then, so softly I almost missed it, she said, show me. My chest cracked open. I will. Not just tonight, she said. Not just with words. I know. I need time. You can have all the time you need. Her eyes flicked up again, and for the first time in weeks, there was something fragile and glimmering in them. Trust, or at least the possibility of it. She exhaled and leaned back against the couch, resting the folder on the coffee table. You brought down Simone. I had help. Ezra, the FBI. But yes, she's done. So is Garrison Tech. The whole board turned on them after the evidence went public. Maya's gaze hardened. She played with people's lives. She did, but I played with your heart. That's worse. She didn't deny it. I want to be better, I said. Not because it looks good on paper, because I need to be. For you. For me. Silence settled again, but this time it didn't feel sharp. It felt like space. like breath. After a few minutes, she stood and walked into the kitchen. I heard the clink of mugs, the soft hiss of the kettle. I stayed on the couch, unsure if I should follow. When she returned, she handed me a cup of tea, chamomile, like the night we'd stayed up talking about poetry. Her fingers brushed mine, and this time she didn't pull away. "You can stay," she said, "but just for a while." I nodded. "That's more than enough." We sat together, sipping quietly. The clock ticked. The candle flickered. Outside, the city kept spinning, unaware of the quiet war we were waging inside four small walls. Later, after we'd talked more about her classes, about how I fired 3 more executives for knowing what Simone had done and saying nothing, she curled up beside me. Not close, but not far either. "I thought I'd never be able to look at you again," she admitted. "I thought I'd never deserve it if you did." She looked up at me, eyes soft. "I still don't know if I can trust you. I don't expect that yet, but I want to try." The hope that bloomed in my chest was so sharp it hurt. "That's all I need." We sat in silence until her head found my shoulder. Her body relaxed just slightly, and as I breathed in the scent of her hair, something shifted inside me. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The next few weeks became a quiet kind of redemption. I didn't push, I didn't expect. I simply showed up. I left notes on her door with poems scribbled in my crooked handwriting. I mailed her the book she said was out of print, with the page she loved highlighted. I let her see the man behind the empire, the man who stammered during hard conversations, who forgot to eat when he was nervous, who learned to brew her tea perfectly, just because she once said she liked it strong. We started taking walks again, late nights through the park, daylight coffee runs. Sometimes we didn't talk, but she always showed up. Little by little, she let me in again. One evening, she invited me back to her place. We cooked together, a proper dinner this time. She laughed when I oversalted the pasta. I kissed the tip of her nose and she didn't pull away. And then, after the plates were clean and the lights dimmed, she pulled me to the couch, curled into me like she used to. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," I said, wrapping my arms around her. "So am I. But I think I still love you." My heart stilled. I think I never stopped. I pulled back to look at her, brushing her hair from her face. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that." And then I kissed her, gently, reverently, like a man who knew the value of the miracle in his arms. Outside, the world remained unchanged. But inside this moment, I had everything. Not because I took it, but because she gave it back. The first time Maya came to my cabin outside the city, she laughed. Not because it was funny. There was nothing remotely humorous about the heavy beams, the stone fireplace, or the creaky floorboards, but because, in her words, it looked like a place someone escapes to when they want to disappear from the world. She wasn't wrong. I bought the cabin years ago during one of the most chaotic chapters of my life, back when I was losing sleep and trust in equal measure. I never really used it. I told people it was a backup property for weekends, but the truth was, I didn't know how to be still. I didn't know how to sit in a place where no one needed anything from me. Until now. Now the quiet didn't scare me, because Maya was in it. She moved through the cabin like she belonged there, barefoot, curious, peeking into cabinets, touching the spines of books I'd forgotten I owned. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, and she wore one of my old sweatshirts, the sleeves rolled twice at the wrists. She looked young and wild and utterly untouchable. And still, she reached for me. We cooked together that night, her sautéing vegetables while I fumbled with garlic cloves and tried not to cut myself. She giggled when I dropped a spoon and made me promise not to ruin the mushrooms. After dinner, we sat on the porch with mugs of steaming tea and blankets over our knees, listening to the wind shift through the trees. It was the first time in months I felt peace. No boardroom, no scandal, no corporate war. Just the soft brush of her knee against mine and the sound of her voice telling me about a book she was rereading for her final thesis. "Do you think people can really change?" she asked, staring out at the dark horizon. "I do," I said, "but I don't think it's easy, or quick, or pretty." She turned her face toward me. "You've changed." "I'm trying to," I said honestly, "every day." Maya smiled, small and warm, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I believe you." Later that night, she wandered into the bedroom before I did. When I followed, I found her standing by the window in the moonlight, her back to me. The sweatshirt had slipped off one shoulder. Her arms were crossed lightly over her chest. She didn't turn when she spoke. "You look at me like I'm made of glass." "Because I don't want to break you," I said. She turned then, slowly, her expression unreadable. "What if I'm already broken? Then I'll hold the pieces together." She walked toward me, one step at a time, until she stood right in front of me. Her fingers found the edge of my shirt, and she gripped it lightly. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she whispered. "You don't have to be." "I'm ready, Aiden." Her voice was steady, brave, but there was vulnerability in her eyes, a whisper of fear, not of me, but of the unknown. Of what came next. I touched her cheek, leaned down, and kissed her slowly, tenderly. Then I led her to the bed. I took my time. I kissed every inch of her neck, her shoulders. The scar on her hip, she once told me, came from climbing a tree when she was 8. My hands moved with reverence, not hunger. My breath synced with hers. She sighed into me, whispered my name like it was a prayer. And when I entered her, it wasn't about sex. It was about something far deeper. A joining, a surrender, a choice. She held my gaze the whole time, eyes wide and glassy, mouth open with wonder. "You're safe," I whispered. "With me? Always." After we lay tangled in the sheets, her body tucked against mine, her hand resting on my chest, I could feel her heartbeat, steady and strong. Mine matched it. "I didn't think it would feel like that," she said quietly. "Like what?" "Like trust." I kissed the top of her head. "That's because it is." She drifted off, breathing softly against my skin, and I stayed awake a while longer, staring at the ceiling, holding her close. For the first time, I let the silence in, and it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like home. Back in the city, things changed. Not all at once, and not with fanfare, but slowly, genuinely. Maya started spending more time at my penthouse. Her books lined my shelves. Her laugh filled the kitchen. She bought a plant and named it after a character from one of her novels. I killed it by accident. She cried, then laughed, then made me promise never to touch her succulents again. We were finding our rhythm. The world didn't stop spinning. There were still board meetings and deadlines. People still whispered about the scandal, about Simone. My name still filled headlines, but I no longer cared. Because when I came home, she was there. And with her, I was not Aiden Cole, CEO. I was just Aiden, a man learning to live in the wreckage of who he used to be, rebuilding brick by brick, word by word. One night, I found her standing on the rooftop of my building, barefoot again, her arms wrapped around herself. "You always find the highest point to think, don't you?" I asked, joining her. She smiled. "Helps me see how small everything really is." I wrapped an arm around her, and she leaned into me. The city pulsed below. "I used to think power was everything," I said. "Now I think it might be love." She looked up at me. "What changed?" "You did." I kissed her temple and pulled something from my pocket, a small envelope. Inside was a letter, written in my own messy scrawl. No grand gestures, no promises I couldn't keep, just truth. She read it slowly, her eyes filling with tears. When she finished, she looked at me. "You mean it?" "With everything I am." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She kissed me instead, soft, slow, certain. Later, as we lay on the rooftop couch beneath the string lights she made me hang, she whispered against my chest, "I want to build something with you." "You are," I said. "You already have." Months passed. She graduated with honors. I stood at the back of the auditorium, clapping so hard my hands hurt. When she spotted me afterward, she ran straight into my arms. We bought a house outside the city. Nothing massive. Just a garden, a porch, a place where the world could slow down. She grew lavender. I read poetry out loud even when I fumbled the lines. She laughed every time. And one morning, while the sun was barely up and she was curled against me in our bed, I looked at her and knew I would never need anything else. Not power, not control, just this. Her, us. I reached into the drawer and pulled out a ring. Not flashy, not loud, but delicate and bright. "Marry me," I whispered, my heart thudding like the first time I saw her in that elevator. Her eyes widened, then softened, and she said yes. Not because I'd earned it, but because she saw the man I was still becoming. And she chose me anyway. Life lesson from the story. Sometimes, the greatest battles we fight aren't in boardrooms or on battlefields, but within ourselves, between who we were and who we dare to become. Aiden and Maya's journey wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy. It was messy, painful, filled with mistakes and regrets. But that's what makes their love story real. True love doesn't require perfection. It asks for honesty. It demands growth. Aiden had to strip away his pride, his walls, and everything he used to define himself in order to show Maya the one thing she'd never been given before: unconditional love and trust. And Maya, brave and fragile all at once, had to let go of fear and betrayal to open her heart again. This story reminds us that trust can be shattered, but it can also be rebuilt. That redemption is always possible if we're willing to face the truth, even when it's ugly. That sometimes love isn't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet choice to stay when it's easier to leave. No matter how broken we are, no matter how deep the scars run, healing begins the moment we choose love over fear, vulnerability over control, and truth over comfort. And maybe that's what real power is, not in what we own, but in who we become for the ones we love. If this story moved you, take a second to let us know. Where are you watching from? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful, emotional stories that stay with you long after the final word. Your story might be waiting just around the corner. Let love find you.